When you're in need of a 4-channel amplifier that includes factory integration features and other settings to control your sound, AudioControl has you covered with the new LC-4.800. I'm Mark from the YouTube channel Car Audio Fabrication, and AudioControl asked me to help them make this video and show you how to install this amplifier and how to adjust its many powerful features. Before we get into it, let's do a quick rundown on the power of this amplifier as well as its dimensions. This amplifier is configurable to be a 4-channel, 3-channel, or 2-channel amp. We have 4 channels at 125 watts at 4 ohms or 4 channels at 200 watts at 2 ohms. We can also bridge each of the channel pairs in order to have 2 times 400 watts at 4 ohms. The footprint comes in at about 9 inches wide, 8 inches deep, and about 2.1 inches tall. Let's get started. Let's start with opening up an LC-4.800 so you know what to expect. Remove the sleeve, open up our box. Inside we have the amplifier itself, we also have an instruction manual, and finally we have an Allen key. So the amplifier has this cover plate that we can remove by loosening a bolt with the provided Allen key in this location and in this location. With the cover plate removed, we have access to all of our different settings here on top, and we can also access all of the different screws in order to secure the wiring. Let's run through an example installation. So here we have the Car Audio Fabrication Integration Test Center. This is basically a car radio system removed outside of the vehicle. We've got the factory radio, we have a factory premium amplifier, and then we have all of the speaker leads that come out of this amplifier and were normally connected to speakers. We have all of those connected to these. This is all connected to a car battery, which we will also attach our amplifier to for power. So basically what we've done is we've taken a complete stock car audio system, removed it from the vehicle, and we have everything we need to tie in. To start installing our amplifier, we want to make sure we've disconnected the ground and the positive lead on the battery. Next, we will pick a mounting location for the amplifier within the vehicle that allows us to still have access to all of the different controls and also allows us a nice wiring path for all of our wires. We'll want to keep the amplifier away from heat, moisture, and dirt, and we want to make sure that we don't block the ventilation slots. Now let's say that I've already securely mounted this in the vehicle using the 4 different mounting locations on the amplifier. The first step is we can connect our 12-volt constant lead. For the 12-volt constant lead, we want to use wire that is from 8 gauge to 3 gauge. In this case, I'm using 4 gauge. Next, we're going to connect our ground wire. Make sure you follow the proper protocol for making a good ground, and you want to use the same wire size for the ground as the 12-volt constant. Now, if you are using RCA line level inputs in order to provide signal to this amplifier, you're going to want to also connect a remote in order to tell this amplifier to turn on. You would do so using a switched 12-volt lead. This amplifier does have AudioControl's GTO or Great Turn On Signal Sense technology built in, so I'm not going to be connecting that because I'm using speaker level inputs. More on this later. If you are using line level inputs, you can simply connect to these 4 input connections by plugging in the RCA wire. And if you want to add another amplifier, say a subwoofer amplifier, to this system, you can actually use these line outputs to take signal out and send it to that other amp. Now, since I'm not going to be using the line level inputs, we need to connect the speaker level inputs, but this system poses a challenge. Because this is a factory premium system, the front speakers have a tweeter output and they also have a mid-range output. If we take a look at that on the RTA, this is our tweeter output. You can see it's only the high range frequencies. And if we connect to the front mid-range leads for this speaker, you can see that gives us the rest of these frequencies. So what we need to do is we actually need to sum this with the tweeter. The AudioControl LC-4.800 allows us to do that. So what we're going to do, there's actually 8 total connections between those 4 speakers. We're going to connect those to both the front in and the rear ends, and then later when we're running through the features, we're actually going to sum everything internally within the amp. Now, as a quick side note, let's say that when you do connect to the RTA for the speaker lead, you find that it's already full range like this. You don't have to use the summing. In that case, you could just leave it set to separate. So I've connected the premium OEM amplifier signal. Here for the front, I use the tweeter leads, and then here for the rear, I use the mid-range leads. And again, we're going to sum everything internally. And you may have noticed there is another set of inputs here. These are for the front high. What you could connect to this third set is, let's say that you had a speaker that plays warning chimes or something of that nature. You can connect those to this And you'll see that there's also this dial on the top of the amplifier that we can actually attenuate whatever signal comes in on those leads. Value here is with vehicles where you have a warning chime, you don't necessarily always want to amplify it because it could be really loud and annoying. Now you can still retain that chime, but you can turn it down. Next, we have the optional ACR1 remote level control. This is not required to have, but if you wanted to give the install the convenience of having a volume control knob or a subwoofer control knob, you could connect this by simply plugging it in. Now things are starting to get a little messy, but hey, we're just on the test bench. I know if you guys were installing this, you'd make sure everything is nice and clean, but the final connection we need to make is our speaker wire connections here. We of course have 4 channels of output, and each of these connections is stable down to 2 ohms, 4 ohms if you bridge. For this example, we're only going to be connecting to 2 of the channels for the speakers, but I've made my connections for those speakers and we're now plugged in. We now have all the wiring complete. We can now move on to doing all of the different settings. The first setting is AudioControl's GTO signal sense. This stands for great turn on. And over here you can see that the radio is currently turned off. I'm going to show you guys what happens up close on the amplifier when I turn it on. So here we go, turning on the radio, and now you can see we have power. So what the amplifier is doing is it monitors the speaker level inputs and it's detected a signal, so it knows to turn the amplifier on. If we turn the radio off, the amplifier also turns off. Now the other thing that's cool about this is I haven't connected a lead to the remote in, but what happens when we use this technology, this now becomes a remote out. In other words, you can see that we have positive voltage on that, so we could connect that wire to another amplifier, and we're now using this amplifier to tell the other amplifier or another device within the system to turn on. Next, we have the front high level input dial, which is connected to these inputs here. I'm not using it in this case, but if you wanted to attenuate the signal from a warning chime or a set of speakers like tweeters, you could do so there. The next setting is another switch. This is for AccuBase and the ACR1. If we want to use our ACR1 remote dial, we can do so by turning on this switch, which also activates the AccuBase circuit. And if you're not familiar with AccuBase, a lot of times in factory OEM systems, they will roll off the bass response as you turn up the volume. They do that to protect their speakers. The AccuBase restores that roll off. It restores the bass. AudioControl has a full video about AccuBase if you want to learn more details about that on their YouTube channel. Before we move on to the next dial, which is for crossover settings, I want to show you guys that if we connect to the speaker outputs on the amplifier currently, you can see that we only have high level. The reason for that is we're currently only getting the signal that's coming in on channels 1 and 2. But if I switch this switch right here that enables summing, you can see that we now have a full range signal. What that summing has done is it's summed all of these inputs so that they are now sent through the output. So now that we've summed and we know we have a full range signal coming out of the outputs of this amplifier, we can move on to our crossover. For channels 1 and 2, this is a high pass crossover, which means whatever setting we set it at, it's going to cut everything below that value. We're letting the frequencies higher than that value go past. This is adjustable from 30 Hz up to 300 Hz and is a 12 dB Linkwitz-Riley crossover. To give you guys a visual indication of exactly what's going on, again, I'm playing pink noise, and just so you understand, the factory premium amplifier on this system has a bit of an EQ curve applied. That's why not everything is flat. But if you watch here, you can see that we're currently set about 30 Hz, so everything above 30 Hz is being allowed to go past. Let's say I turn it all the way up to 300 Hz. You can see that we're now rolling off and attenuating the frequencies below 300 Hz. Setting the crossover, of course, allows us to limit the frequencies that are sent to our speakers. We don't want our mid-range speakers playing subwoofer bass. Now, after the crossover setting there, we have a switch. This allows us to switch between a mono setting or a stereo setting. When we compare channels 1 and 2 to channels 3 and 4, you can see that both pairs of those channels have these same 3 settings. They allow us to turn on the ACR1 or off along with AccuBase. We can also control a crossover, and we can control mono or stereo. The difference with channel 3 and 4 though is we can determine if we want that crossover to be either a low pass crossover or a high pass crossover. This is valuable because let's say you want to run channels 3 and 4 for something like perhaps a subwoofer. You could make this a low-pass crossover and set your settings so that frequencies above a certain point don't go to the speaker. Now the last setting that we need to cover, and probably the first setting that you actually want to adjust once you go to install this, is the gain controls. Before we get started with setting the gain controls, we want to make sure that we unplug all of the speaker wire leads. In order to adjust the gain, we're going to start the process with turning the gain all the way down. We will then play a test tone on our radio. In this case, I'm playing a 1000 Hertz test tone, and we're going to turn up the volume until we see the MILC source clip detection light turn on. This light is located here. Once the light turns on, we want to take note of where the volume level is and make sure that we never turn up the source unit past that level. We'll leave the source unit at that maximum undistorted volume, and now we can come over to the amplifier and we're going to slowly adjust the gain up. Now what we're watching for is we want to watch for when the gain maximized light turns on. There we go, right there. So now that the gain is maximized, I'm going to back it off slightly, and now our gain is set. So we've discussed the install, we've talked about all the settings. There is one more important thing to know about this amplifier. This amplifier has the ability to give you diagnostic codes. Up at the top of the amplifier is a blue LED light, and it's hard to tell right now because of the bright lights from my camera, but that blue light will blink if the protection is activated for this amplifier. Also on the amplifier, you'll find this red light here, which is the protection light. It doesn't happen often, but if you do happen to have a problem with an amplifier and that protection light is blinking, you can check the manual and you can see which of these different codes the blinking corresponds with. This gives you a little bit more information, which is very useful for troubleshooting should a problem arise. So there we have it. Next time you're in need of a 4-channel amplifier that's fully configurable, allows you to integrate with a factory audio system or an aftermarket one, the new LC-4.800 will help you make good sound great. To purchase this amplifier or find an authorized dealer near you, please check the links down in the video description. If you'd like to see some of the other audio control videos, you can do so here on screen. Once again, I'm Mark from the YouTube channel Car Audio Fabrication, and on behalf of AudioControl, thank you for watching.